Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our talk. My name is Bobby Preston. I'm with WMC Global. This is our first time at SaintCon. We flew in from Washington, D.C. a couple days ago. I'm here with my colleague, Ben Coon. So at first, I just want to, again, thank you and the volunteers at SaintCon for having us. This conference came highly regarded, and we were told to come out here, and we can see why, from the community aspect, why this conference is considered to be so special. So thank you for making us newbies feel welcome. With that, I'm going to hand over to Ben, give you a sense of where we come from, and then we'll dive into some of the content.
So WMC Global is a threat intelligence company that is, we're mobile first, but not mobile only. We specialize in phishing, phishing kits, compromised credential recovery, and threat actor attribution. And I just got to tell you right now, I hate public speaking, so please forgive me. I'm going to stumble, but I'll get through this.
And I come with 6 years of a background working with anti-phishing technologies. It's a problem that we're passionate about solving. And Ben was part of the original team in the early 90s who helped develop the interoperability of SMS. So if you think about the mid-90s, Verizon could text Verizon, AT&T could text AT&T. With the ability to open up those channels, Ben's team played a role in that. And so we have a close understanding of how this network is connected and playing our little part into the billion-dollar industry that SMS marketing is, or SMS plays as a role that SMS plays today. To really just start with a fair warning, we're going to cover some phishing kits that are impacting different brands, and certain brands are being blocked. So we're not trying to pick on anyone here, but this is where the data took us. So just wanted to say, no hard feelings. This is just the right forum to share, what we're looking at in the threat actor source code and the phishing kits. So why SMS? I think the threat actors realize that they have an attentive audience. If you think about the open rate with email compared to 98%, it's almost a guarantee that the SMS message that the threat actor is delivering is going to be open. On top of that, they have the timeliness. So over half the text messages that are delivered are read within 1 or 5 minutes. I'm not sure if we can all relate to that, but some people refuse to have a notification go unanswered. And so that the threat actors realize that they have an attentive audience that will be timely in the action, depending on the call to action that they're trying to get across. Now, when we think about how these messages reach our handsets, there's a few different channels that can be used, whether it's person-to-person or application-to-person. There are several different channels that the threat actors can leverage based on the type of message or what the end goal is in the phishing campaign itself. So to start out, I mentioned person-to-person. That's what we're all familiar with, texting with our family, friends, and loved ones. But application-to-person has really skyrocketed over the last decade. If we think about the engagement between corporations and enterprises with their consumers, be it your local pizza parlor or Uber, we're all familiar with those automated notifications. And those are delivered over application-to-person channels. There's two in particular. The 10-digit long code is probably most popular, where these companies like Google and Twilio, they have these large amounts of numbers that you can purchase and buy so you can engage with your audience. That also is something that the threat actors take advantage of, knowing that they have an attentive audience and they can send SMS messages through trusted channels. That allows those messages to reach the handsets. And then the second application-to-person technique is called shortcode. So it's those 4, 5, or 6-digit numbers that you see from really large corporations. And shortcode is probably probably the cleanest channel.
Most secure way.
Secure. It's the most highly regulated channel of what we're looking at here for the different delivery methods. And so this is regulated by a compliance program, and these codes, you might have some marketing teams that use these codes to engage with their user base, although some of their messages also come across as fishy, as security personnel looking at some of these messages. And then finally, we have email to SMS, and I know Ben is passionate about this channel in particular.
Email to SMS, the easiest way to describe this is a dumpster fire. There's zero barrier to entry for somebody to send email to SMS. Threat actors know this, and they leverage this. So if you think about this, to send 250,000, 500,000 different types of text messages through an email to SMS channel takes about 30 seconds. And if you're playing whack-a-mole in this space, it's already on the handsets. A couple other notes about this. So if we're talking about how threat actors use these channels, in the P2P channel, you might have heard the term SIM boxing. You get a little box, you get a bunch of SIM cards, you pump it in there, you attach it to a computer, and you blast out your spam or your phishing. A2P, or 10-digit long code, where you're going through a CPaaS platform, which we'll talk about on the next slide. Compromise API keys. If you're paying attention to the news, there was a big breach that happened on a CPaaS platform where a lot of those API keys were exposed. Shortcodes, so shortcodes do get used in phishing attacks or in spam attacks, but because it's so highly regulated, we don't see that happen. Usually when a phishing campaign hits on a shortcode, it's only live for a few minutes, and then that shortcode either gets shut down or that attack gets mitigated. And then email to SMS, if you know how to spoof an email, if you know how to send email through an open relay, I mean, you can put everything together, and this channel is just way abused. We are actually working with the federal government on how to regulate this a little bit better to protect people because it's just too wide open.
So you have those different channels that you can use to deliver the method, but what is the mechanism that you use to deliver the spam message? CPaaS is probably the most popular. So these are legitimate services that can be used for nefarious means, mostly through account takeover. So as close as, as we try to be as best as we can about protecting our credentials, but if you realize that your teams have access to a CPaaS platform with a certain volume of messages that you can send on a monthly basis, it's worth double checking, which team is operating the CPaaS platform and double checking on those credentials. Because these are trusted pipes, it allows those messages to reach the handset. So even, if you think about the different methods that carriers use to try and stop these messages from being delivered, if you have trusted pipes, again, that just increases the likelihood that the campaign will get past the SMS firewall. The second and third, so what we see with open source software and tools built into phishing kits in particular, and we'll show you some different examples, but marketing tools. There's a wide range of marketing tools that, again, legitimate businesses that get used nefariously, but I will say there's a range between the shady online or e-marketing tools and legitimate ones. A good example of more of a shady one is SMS, bulk-sms.us, which is now hosted on .biz. But they know their audience, where if you can upload a message with numbers that you have purchased legitimately, this tool will promise to deliver the method, and they use the marketing statistics to back up the almost guarantee of the messages being delivered.
Hold on this slide for just a second. If you notice on the slide up there, you've got Nexmo, Twilio, and Text Local. So these are legitimate companies that are setting up infrastructure to allow marketing firms to send out messages that are not spam or not phishing. And so we see these guys getting targeted for API keys. The other thing that I'll note here is these CPaaS platforms, they make their SDKs for their tools open source. So when Bobby says we see these embedded in the actual phishing kits, that's the SDK. They'll take that SDK, put it in the phishing kit. Now, not only do they have a phishing website, but they have a means of delivery.
In terms of emerging trends, it feels like this is shifting every 6 to 12 months. So it was tough to only boil it down to a few. But if we think about the conversations that we're having with different teams, whether it's financial services or just a large enterprise, the three that we see the most common popping up, the first one being smaller campaigns. I think we're used to seeing more spray and pray campaigns in terms of volume and number of messages, but there's also the number of unique URLs that are built into these larger campaigns. Over the last 6 to 12 months, we've just seen a longer tail of businesses who haven't been impacted or targeted or imitated through SMS before, which whether they're going after low-hanging fruit or they're just trying to look at companies that maybe aren't familiar with how to respond to these campaigns or have a different set of resources. What we're seeing them is just building these phishing kits. We'll talk about some of the threat actors and how prolific they are in terms of hundreds of kits that these folks are building over a yearly basis. But smaller campaigns, the two examples that we have being Microsoft and Uber, smaller campaigns is something that we continue to expect to see. So if you just take a look at your peers and who else might be affected through headlines or press releases, not to say it's going to happen to you, but it might come. It wouldn't surprise us. I think we see them roaming around based on how successful these campaigns are. So just to stay aware.
Smaller campaigns were started by threat actors to avoid volumetrics and blocking. So, these big spray and pray campaigns where they would get, 100,000 numbers and they would snowshoe their way through the carrier platforms to try and be hidden, started getting picked up more and more. So what they found is if they lowered the number of messages that they were sending out in a phishing campaign, it wouldn't click the volumetrics rule, and they were able to do this. And they were getting a little bit more lucrative return on what they're doing. Two things to note here. So in here, if you look at this, this is a classic call to action where you've got a URL. You're going to hear me talking about kill chain. One of the things that we try and educate folks on is the kill chain of hitting a domain and knocking that domain down. That's just one area. On these two, you'll see you've got two pieces of kill chain here. You've got not only the URL or the domain, you've got the phone number that's sending it. There's two places that you can do a kill on this. And if you kill the number, you're likely going to kill more campaigns. If you kill the domain, you've killed that one. If you hit that domain and take it down, that domain's already on handsets. It's already done its damage. If you get that number, if you take that number down, that number can now no longer send text messages, or that number gets blocked for sending text messages, and now the threat actor has to think, oh, I've got to go get another number. So now you're causing that threat actor a little bit of pain.
Second emerging trend we're seeing is smishing to vishing, where a text messages will be delivered and there won't be a URL in the text message. It will ask the user to call a certain number in response to a certain fraudulent charge. So if you think about what the threat actor can take away from a smishing to vishing, because there's no URL to scan the SMS firewall, it's more likely that this SMS will get through those existing controls. But you also have an ID number at the bottom. So if someone calls that number, the ID number at the bottom of the text message can be used as an identifier so they can manage which campaign this alleged user is calling from. So in this example, it's Wells Fargo, but we have another example where that same phone number was imitating Bank of America.
So in this situation, what the threat actor is doing is they're sending this out, and they're using one phone number for the victim to call back on. If they'll ask the victim, what's your ID number? If the victim says, well, there was no ID number, they know they've got a Bank of America client. Well, my ID number is blah, 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 blah. They know that they've got a Wells Fargo. Take note in that text message, that number up there, that 14101000027. A lot of folks will look at that and go, that looks kind of strange. That's email to SMS. That's the SMSC that does the translation from the email account to a number so that it can pass through the SMSC to be delivered.
And then the third emerging trend is CEO impersonation. So the text message that we receive from our boss, which is really a scammer on the other end. I think some of the questions that we get are, how do they have access to my employees' phone numbers? Should I have my employees save my CEO's email or phone number in their phone books? You know, you might roll your eyes at this, but this one really goes back to that user awareness. See something, say something. I think it's so easy to use tools and marketing tools to identify who's the newest hire at the company. If it's a smaller company, what are the odds that the CEO could reach out to this user? So whether your company is 50 people or 15,000 people, I think if you can start to understand who is receiving text messages like this and start to track those trends, you can have an understanding of how often people are receiving these, because we all are familiar with happy clickers, but maybe those happy clickers are more likely to go through this campaign. Now, Ben, your team engages with these.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is how about educating your folks that the CEO is never going to call a common employee? I mean, come on. I wish my CEO wouldn't talk to me, but I report directly to him, so maybe I need to lower myself here. So yeah, we engage with these guys. So what this is the threat actor is looking for you to do him a favor. He'll ask you to go out and get Apple gift cards or Google Play gift cards or something like that, scratch off the back. I'm in with a client. This client's doing us a real solid, so I want to give them something, or it's this guy's birthday, I want to give him something. You scratch off the back. They normally they'll tell you to get 2 gift cards for $500 each. I would tell you the last one that I engaged with personally, the guy at the other end, the threat actor, was saying, just go ahead and use your corporate card on this. So he was real. Oh, the numbers are easy to get. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I mean, to get a number to send a text message, just look up text now. Easy way to get, if you have an email account, you can send a text message on a number. So yeah, we'll talk about that. There's a million ways that numbers are plentiful.
So we're going to take a text message and go through a story. So we're going to link one text message, the URL, back to a phishing kit. And what we're going to try to do is demonstrate the different blocking mechanisms, evasion techniques, and start to paint a picture of how prolific one actor is, how many campaigns is this one kit responsible for, because we're all familiar with the URL takedowns. but I think we're reaching a point where we can start to ask more from our vendors beyond how many URLs did you take down? Which kit was behind it? Can you tell me where the data was being exfiltrated? I mean, the information's available. So what we'll do is let's just start here, and Ben will guide us through it.
If you don't know what a phishing kit is, and I'll assume a bunch of you do, but just in case you don't, it's when the threat actor is going to deploy a phishing site, he doesn't compromise a domain and then go up there and code the phishing site. He'll code the phishing site offline, and then he'll zip that up into a zip file, and then he'll deploy that to a stolen domain, a free domain, a compromised domain. Then he unzips that. Now that campaign is live. All he needs to do is push traffic through it. In this case, on that URL, we were able to find this phishing kit. And so we're going to start taking a look at this phishing kit. Again, I want to iterate. You're going to see a lot of company names in here. We're not trying to pick on anybody. Everybody's getting hit. This is where the data took us. The other thing to note is we're going to put out a lot of information in the next couple of minutes. So bear with us. And if you want to talk afterwards, we are really passionate about this, and we will talk till midnight tonight about this. But we only have another 45 minutes.
Clock is ticking.
Clock is ticking. So this is what a phishing kit looks like. If you look here, so here's the types of files that are inside this phishing kit. You got PHP files, PNG files, JavaScript, CSS, text files, JPEGs, all of this. This gives us a view of what the directory tree looks like if you were actually sitting on the server. So interesting to note here, we are not sitting on the server. This is actually from the kit being pulled down. A couple of things to take note of here. The first file we're going to look at is this finish.php. But keep in mind that L0GZ. You can tell hackers love their leet speak. So here we go with this file. So here the threat actor, Crypto. Now we've been chasing Crypto for a while. One quick note. There are two players in this. There's the kit developer, and then there's the kit operator. They are not always the same person. Sometimes they are. The kit developer will sometimes develop kits and sell them to the kit operators. We're not sure about Crypto. I'm of the opinion that Crypto is both the developer and the operator, but we're going to check this. Notice that he is a Telegram guy. You're going to see a lot of Telegram in here. Now we're going to start breaking apart what this kit's doing. So here is everything that the kit is harvesting, or this phishing page is harvesting from the victim. So you've got username, you've got password, you've got billing information. In the billing information, take note of mobile. So they're asking for your mobile number, and they're asking for your carrier PIN. We're going to talk about that in just a second. You're grabbing credit card information, so now they got your credit card number, your CVV, expiration, social security number, ATM PIN, BEN info. The second part here is email address to password, or email address and password. So I want you to think about something. If I've got your email account and your password, what information can I deem from that? I can find out who else you're banking with, what streaming services you have, who you're doing business with, who your family is. I've got all that information. Now, if I have that carrier or your phone number and that carrier PIN, I can do a SIM swap. So think about this. I figure out all of your banks. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to drain all the money from the banks, but your bank's on 2FA. I go and do a SIM swap. I take your number over. I hit all of your banks. I do withdrawals. I use your phone as two-factor authentication. Once I'm done, I throw all that away and walk away. We see in Telegram, these credentials that go up for sale, if there is a phone number and a carrier PIN code, that will go for about $700 to $1,000 more for a single credential than if you don't have that information. That's because that SIM swap is so important. You can do so much with that. So here we are with that log, that L0GZ. In this case, you've got a file at the end of that directory, chasefools_email.txt. And in this bit of code, they're opening that file. So we can deem from this that this is where that server is storing all of the credentials that are being phished. Now we're going to take a look at the config file. These guys are pretty good developers. They have config files. They do a bunch of different stuff. So here we can see that we know that the threat actor is collecting phished credentials. Here we can see that he's going to email those credentials off to this email account. Now, here's another point in the kill chain, right? So if you think about it, you take the phone number that sent the text, you whack the domain down, and now you kill this email. There's 3 points in the kill chain that you hit. I guarantee you that email account is not just on one URL. If you think about it, one kit could be responsible for 1,000 URLs. So if you kill this, there's 1,000 other domains or 1,000 other phishings that you've mitigated. Save to host 1, so they've enabled this, so we know that they're saving the files down. And then take a look at this exit link. So the exit link is to chase.com. So at any point in this phishing attack, if you either don't meet a standard or if you complete a fill out of a form, the next piece that you get hit with is this exit link, and it's going to pitch you off to the chase.com. And we're going to come back to that in a second. If you look about halfway down, you've got an enable antibots. So if this were enabled, here's another point in the kill chain, because you would have an API key to antibots. And what antibots is it's an organization that collects ways that bots are used. These are like spiders that go out and spider the internet and things like that. If you have that enabled and you have the key, then you're blocking all of that. So if this were enabled and you've got that key and you are coming from a bot, you would exit out to that chase.com. You've got geolocation, USA visitors only. This is disabled, but we see this enabled a lot. I will tell you that we are tracking a threat actor right now that is geolocating his phishing to his cities. So he will find a specific city, and only folks on IP addresses in that city can render that phishing page. Everybody else gets pitched to Google. Mobile only equals 1. I'm sorry, I'm going fast. We got a lot of data to cover. So mobile only equals 1. So this is saying that on this particular phish, you have to be on a mobile device, on a mobile UA, in order to get that page to render. So now you can start to put together, wow, there's a lot going on inside this code. Maybe your SOC or your threat analyst group is trying to render a phish, and they're using a desktop browser, and they're going to you and saying, I can't get to it. Or you're pitching it to your takedown vendor. They don't know about this, and they're saying, well, the site's already down. I get pitched to Google. Now, the site's still live. You've got to use a mobile UA.
So we're going to pause on crypto. We'll come back and we'll show you how active they are. We're going to move over to another threat actor that we've seen over the last 18 months, Mr. Weeby.
Mr. Weeby. I don't know where they come up with these names. So Mr. Weeby has been, 18 months, he's been running very prolific in the SMS phishing area. And here's the config file. So here we're logging users. If you take a look at what they're logging in that user, so they're logging your user agent and your IP address with a date. That feeds directly into that anti-back. So you see that anti-back equals 1. If you go to that page and you come off of that page and then you try to go back to that page from the same IP, that blocks you. So think about your escalation path that hits your SOC or it hits somebody in your organization. They go to it, they pitch it over to the threat analyst go to it, and they're like, there's nothing here. So you can see their sophistication is kind of getting here. Send email is set to 1, so they're sending all of the compromised credentials off. They're also saving the results. Telegram 1, so here we know that in this case, the third thing that they're doing, they're sending an email with the credentials, they're saving the credentials to the host, and they're posting the credentials on Telegram in a closed channel. And you can see that down with that chat ID there. So that is the Telegram chat ID. And I think we're going to look at that chat ID next, right?
Yes, so we're going to take this chat ID, use that as a pivot point across a database of kits and see how prolific is this chat ID across other unique kits. And each kit that we characterize and index is hashed at the SHA-256 level. I think the most common difference that we see between the same kit that might have a different iteration, it's the exfil method. So whether it's a different email address or a different chat ID, we tend to see the same nuts and bolts with just different details.
Also another link in the kill chain, so if we think about that. So one of the reasons that we did this before we actually execute this search, One of the reasons we did this is we found that some threat actors were staying below a monetary gain so that federal law enforcement would not get involved because of that lost monies is below a certain amount. It's not enough to trigger FBI to get involved. But what we were able to talk with federal law enforcement about was what if we have, for instance, a threat actor that's hitting Target and Walmart, and between the two of them, because we can paint the picture with kits that it raises it above, would you then open up a federal case? Well, yeah, because now the total monetary loss is above it. So think about this if you guys want to do, if you're working for an organization and you want to do threat actor attribution, but you can't get that raised, if you're doing something like this, now you can say, well, wait a minute, there's this company over here, let's reach out to them, collaborate, and raise that money value up so we can get federal law enforcement. So we take a look at this content, we do that search, this chat number shows up in 38 kits. And if you look at who they're attacking, it goes across the board. So now think about what I was just saying. If we get two of these companies to start working together, it raises that value. But also think in the kill chain, if we kill that bot or that channel ID, if we go to Telegram and say, take this offline, it takes all of these kits offline. Now you can't do anything with that. And let's say each one of these is responsible for 100 URLs. Now you've done a lot of damage with one link in a kill chain. This just goes on and on and on. So here's the actual API key used for the bot to type to Telegram. And we're going to take a look at that. We do this search. We're in 35 kits. Another link in the kill chain. So sometimes when you're parsing through kits and you're looking at this, you may not have the chat ID or the chat ID is added post-deployment before or after they get the site live on the site, but you might have this API key. So it's understanding what's happening in the kit and looking at it from a view of, I can kill here, 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 and here. Or I can recover credentials from here, 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 here. Can you go back a slide? Are you going to say something about this? Go back one more. One more. This can be reverse engineered to get into that channel and to recover those credentials. I'm not condoning doing anything bad, but you can't get into that if you wanted to.
Now we're going to take a look at some of the extensive bot blocking capabilities and the different evasion methods they employ to keep their campaign online as long as possible.
Threat actors do a lot to block people who are trying to catch them from seeing what they're doing. And they put a lot of effort. The other thing I will tell you, and this is something, it's near and dear to my heart because I talk to a lot of organizations. A lot of organizations. And what I have found is that legal teams inside these organizations, they don't support, for lack of better terms, sharing information with other organizations, especially if you're in competition with them. So if we go back to my analogy of Walmart and Target, they're not going to share a bunch of information because they're competing against each other. Threat actors, they share everything. I've been in channels where a threat actor will say, hey, you want to run a Netflix campaign over SMS? Use this carrier, don't use that carrier. They make it all public. They share these bot files all the time. And whenever somebody updates one, they put it back out. Here's keyword blocking. It's just a list of keywords that we go through. And if any of those keywords gets picked up by the web page, it kicks the person out. Going down to the next one. So here we see more keywords. Too fast on that. So here we see Amazon. You see Amazon in there. You see crawler, fish tank, DreamHost, all of this. So this is a way that, again, the threat actors are trying to keep people from discovering them who are trying to shut them down. The last piece we're going to talk about is IP addresses. This file gets really, really interesting here in a few seconds. So you can see they're blocking a lot of IP addresses. But as we started going through this, what we found was this bit of code right here. So this is base 64 encoded. And what we found here, so here we're working with a kit developer and a kit operator. So in this case, the kit developer is putting his kits up for sale. The kit operator buys them for 150, 200 bucks. The kit developer says, thanks, come again, and off he goes. When we decode this, we see another exfiltration. No honor among thieves. So here, the kit developer is getting all of the credentials for everybody who buys this kit sent back to them as well.
So if we think about how specific you can be to avoid being detected or to not render a certain web page, keywords and IP addresses are certainly a broad place to start, but what if you could get down to the user agent? So you have to fit within a certain screen size. And what do we have on screen here?
Here we go. So here you have to have a screen width of 699 in order to render the page for this US bank phish. It's a bit of JavaScript, and this gets even more in depth as we go to the next threat actor. So here we ran across some kits that were, the only way I can explain it is, we deployed it, or we deemed it as canvas. So as we go through this is another example of where you have to have a screen width of 699. So this is a modular kit. Modular is the kit developer in this instance. So here we see, more of the same. You've got an email account. You've got, they're crafting the email here to send the files, and the log file down there, it's logs.txt. They also above the logs.txt, what you'll see is visitors. So this is the other thing. Anybody who clicks on that link, they get listed as a visitor. I was out at a conference talking to the state AGs, and one of the things they were talking about, one of the state AGs says, we don't know how many people are clicking. One of the things we do is collect a lot of this information, and we built a nice little map, and we pulled up California at the time, and it flooded with a whole bunch of information. They're like, wow, that's a lot of clicks. So yeah, what we understand, people are happy clickers. They love to click on things. And we're going to break down this modular kit a little bit. This one gets a little bit more sophisticated in how they're blocking. So here we've got it's a COVID-19 trace out of the UK. Modular operates mostly in the UK. And what we see here is they're going to start really breaking down how they look at who is visiting that site. Pay attention to these lines here, because we're going to come back to those, that debug info and that vendor info. Here you can see they've got variables for screen width, screen height, and they got another one for color depth. Who would have thought that? So they're looking to see, are you using an RDP machine? Are you RDPing into a machine and then detonating that site? So, if you think about how threat groups work, very few of us will sit on our laptops and go to nasty places on the internet. We normally use a virtual machine or something like that. This is trying to detect that. Here they're looking at color depth, they're looking at width again, they're doing bot detects. And then if we go down here, they're trying to find out, are you using Selenium? Are you using a headless browser? If you're using this information, or if you're using this technology, I should say, then we're going to kick you out as well. They're looking to find out, do you have a real display?
So now we're going to pivot off of those two pieces of code. Again, you start to see a pattern. How prolific is this one fingerprint? And we could use that as a pivot point. So we have 105 files containing those same lines of code that was pulled from the previous screenshot.
And again, this is mostly UK. This was a lot of package delivery, a lot of COVID-19 stuff. I think we did see some banks in there, and the UK government. They were attacking the UK government pretty hard. The UK's version of the IRS. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
So this brings us back to the original screenshot. So we saw crypto on Telegram. So if we took that same application of trying to pivot off of a certain string of code to figure out how prolific is crypto, who else are they targeting in my area, in my ecosystem, which TTPs are they leveraging against other companies, does that match what we're trying to do? So we think a kit can just tell a more powerful story other than how quickly a domain was taken down, to understand who is behind the kit, where that victim data is going, and then where else are they attacking. So if we take this just / crypto on Telegram and do that content search, we're going to see 512 files that have that same exact signature. So whether they're advertising their wares or it's for bragging rights, this is just another fingerprint that allows us to understand the scope of their campaigns.
It's interesting to note in this search right now, so when we do searches like this, we're looking for uniqueness, right? So although we're finding this string in the actual kit, the kits are different. There's something different in that kit. So this just shows you how prolific this guy is.
So if we dropped some of the, the / and on Telegram to see what if we just searched on crypto? Does those results change? So we have 512 hits with crypto on Telegram, but if we move forward just a little bit, we have over 1,200 results. So at some point, their marketing message changed to the other developers in the community. And so again, everything inside of a kit is a pivot point to better understand who's behind the campaign and where the information is going.
I didn't hear that. Say that again. Ease of use, I would say. The mobile aspect of it, it's very easy to set up a private channel and a bot and have that bot right to that private channel. Kind of like, Telegram's not the only one. Telegram's the example we hear. We see Discord being used, IRC, ICQ, believe it or not, is still being used. But Telegram in this one is very prolific with these threat actors. We're trying to educate companies to mitigate this. I will tell you, we've been successful in mitigating it when we've been charged with doing so. We've worked with federal law enforcement to try and infiltrate some of those. I know that federal law enforcement's had some trouble getting Telegram to cooperate, but we've had some success with Telegram. I will tell you, in Telegram, so unlike Discord, I'm getting off topic here, but that's okay. Unlike Discord, in Discord, if you are a threat actor and you're operating in Discord, you have to prove yourself time and time again to get to a higher place in a channel or invited to a higher place to a channel where more and more stuff's revealed. On Telegram, I would say Telegram's more like the script kiddie place to do things. So on Telegram, all you have to do is say, I want to join, and people out there will brag. The other thing on Telegram that we see a lot of is, let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to do SMS campaigns. Let me share with you the software that I built to send SMS campaigns. And a lot of bragging on there. But again, I get the feeling that it's more script kiddie stuff. These are the lower level actors that are doing this. The bigger threat actors or the state attacks, the state level attacks, that seems to be more handled on Discord or private channels. Elsewhere on the dark web than they are on here. I hope that answered your question as best I could.
So we sized up crypto and how active they are. We mentioned Mr. Weeby earlier. So I think with crypto at most, we saw 1,200 results. If we did that same content search across the database to see how active Mr. Weeby is, we're approaching almost 4,000 files that has that signature, Mr. Weeby, in it. And so I think when we talked earlier, these smaller campaigns targeting a longer tail, in particular, Mr. Weeby has clearly expedited or made an efficient process to replicate the latest version of the websites at scale.
This guy's got a lot of kits. If you take a look at this, in what we're seeing here, some of these organizations are large organizations. Like you see GTE there, you see M&T Bank, you see Fifth and Third, and then you see some smaller credit unions that are in there. But I will tell you, he is selling a lot of kits. He moves his shop quite often, too. And a lot of these guys, another point of note, a lot of these guys, they operate on the open net, on the clear net. So when they set up their shops, they set them up right on the clear net. You don't have to be on the dark net or do anything. You just go in there. You can pay with whatever means you want. And it's interesting to follow the money. I'm trying to see how I say this. I'm sure what happens sometimes is somebody will phish a credit card and use that to buy other kits. I'll just put it that way.
So after Mr. Weeby and Crypto, there's another name that's been prolific over the last 18 months, and that's Spox. And another good example of the threat actor signature and their rules for deploying their kits.
I'm sorry, can you go back up one?
Yeah.
I learn, every time I look at a kit, I see something new. Go to the next page. Look at the different types of blocking he's got here. He's got an IP blacklist, a bot crawler, a bot Spock, something that he's developed himself, another blacklist it looks like, and he's including all of those. These guys go through very, very stringent methods to keep good guys from finding them. Sorry, I just noticed that.
Keep it coming.
So this is an interesting note. A lot of times when we're talking to organizations and they say, where can I find out who's phishing me? We ask them to take a look at your refer logs. What is referring to your website? As we saw with the chase.com, and Chase looks at their refer logs, they'll probably pick up that phishing page doing a refer to them. Here, this threat actor is saying, ha, I'm not going to let you do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this Cutley site, which then will redirect me to the Chase site, because this Cutley does redirect to chase.com. So now what do they see in the refer logs? They see Cutley. So these guys are always thinking. We picked this up off of a threat actor channel where they were saying, no, do it like this, guys. If you do it like this, less chance you'll get caught.
So most of the kits that we've looked at so far are targeting consumers or customers. I think over the last month or two, we've seen some headlines about certain widely used applications targeting employee credentials, specifically single sign-on, as one method to, instead of looking for the personal identifiable information of a consumer, what if you just need username and password to access the company network?
I'm the nervous one, remember?
So here's an example of one kit that we had initially picked up, and what makes this a little bit different, we saw a lot of PHP files in the previous kits. Ben, what do you see here?
So here they're using Django to deploy this kit. So you see a lot of Python in there. And this was interesting when we first started digging into this, and we've dug a lot further since this presentation is put together. The other thing to take note on here is towards the bottom you see 2 exe files. I don't know what those exe files are, but I'm going to go find out after this conference, because that's no bueno. So here's Telegram again. Another Telegram bot, another point in the kill chain. So we've talked about pivot points, favicons. So people wouldn't think that a favicon could be a pivot point, but when we hashed the favicons on this and we did a search on that SHA-256 hash, we found 2 kits were using that favicon. So we had the one and then this one, which was T-Mobile. So this is part of that single sign-on, as everyone here should probably know, that Okta is a single sign-on. If you were using Okta, I would really pay attention to phishing, especially right now. The amount of stuff that we're seeing target Okta right now, the amount of new domains that are being stood up with the word Okta in it is a little bit alarming. So here we're going to break apart this because we wanted to figure out what is it that they're doing. Now, in this case, there's no monetary gain here. They're not going to get credit cards that they can sell. And they get usernames and passwords that they can sell. But what was the point of this? So the point of this, I think we're going to see it in the config file here.
Yep.
Yeah, in the config file here, the point of this is the threat actor is just trying to gain employee credentials here. So it's not business email compromise. What they want is back-end systems. They either want accounting systems, HR systems, or any type of system that can do provisioning. In the cases that we were seeing in Okta that we were doing investigations on, it was all the last part. They were trying to do some sort of provisioning. Whether it's, in the case of T-Mobile, are they trying to provision phone numbers? Are they trying to provision accounts so that they can go into a store and do SIM swapping? We don't know. But I will tell you that this one was alarming. Another note on this, prior to single sign-on, when we saw attacks happening on large organizations where they were trying to get into the back end of organizations. We went to a company and said, listen, you're being targeted. And we were talking to I think it was the CTO at that point, and we were saying, we got to do something, we got to mitigate this. It was all coming over SMS, and it was targeting all of their employees. And the CTO at that point says, I know what we'll do, we'll change the website. So they completely ripped the website down and stood up a whole new website, all new CSS, all new color schemes, everything. 24 hours later, that site was being deployed as phishing sites. 24 hours later. And we're standing there and we're like, okay, you really got to start thinking this thing through, because changing things, it is so easy to rip a site and stand up a new one that's not going to do anything. So this is where we really started heading down this kill chain methodology that we were thinking. And if we go back and kind of cover this again, email accounts, phone numbers, API keys, whether it's a bot API key, a Telegram API key, domains, email accounts, if I didn't say that already. Anything that you can kill in that, you should kill. Domains where you need to absolutely take the domain down, killing an API key has a much broader effect than doing a domain, because you're now fighting. I will tell you, email to SMS, the largest attack I saw was targeting a bank. And in 15, 20 minutes, I think we saw something like 280,000 unique URLs. On those unique URLs, it was probably about 70 domains. And that took just that amount of time to get out. And playing whack-a-mole with those domains to get that mitigated, well, guess what? They're already on the handsets. I mean, people are already clicking on that. And think about this. If you're going to take a domain down and you go to a registrar, that's going into an abuse box. That abuse box then needs to get picked up by an analyst. They then need to vet that abuse. Once they vet that abuse, then they put it in for takedown. And I think it goes into suspension for like 15 days, and then it goes down. It's way too late, way too late.
So it's not all doom and gloom. I think at this point we know what the table stakes are for an effective anti-phishing program through user awareness. But as anything evolves, what can we leave you with just for things to think about? Whether this is something that's familiar to you, such as CEO scams, or you're hearing about your peers complain about these campaigns, just because of how quickly these threat actors are moving around, not to put any fear or uncertainty out there, but it could happen. And so just to think about it, it's a little bit easier if we could have that proactive discussion. If you just think about the intelligence that your teams are already collecting, whether you're an individual analyst or a SOC team, or you're fortunate to have resources such as brand protection feeds coming in, but just taking stock of what intelligence you are collecting, both internal and external. So we know that the report a phish button is effective. If you give them an opportunity to report it, they will. If you could apply that same to CEO scams, how many more messages would you be likely to see from your employees? And then customer support. We found that most effective customer support teams have a method to collect this SMS intelligence and voice call. So things such as the user experience, were they imitating our bank or maybe our card holder? How did they present themselves? What was the content of the message? Because I think someone mentioned earlier, how likely are these organizations who are hosting the phishing or hosting the phone number? I think everyone wants to keep their side of the street clean. And so if we can figure out the appropriate way to route the abuse, more often than not, you're going to be thanked and action will be taken. And then just acknowledging that, do the channels that we offer and the information that we collect, are we identifying SMS, voice, and traditional email? So I think over the last month or two, we're having more conversations where the institution says, geez, August was the first time that we had more SMS phishing complaints than we had traditional. And that was the first time that that they've experienced that. We also find ourselves educating. We saw the evasion techniques around mobile-only or geo-locked sites. Do you or your team or your existing vendors have the ability to try multiple user agent strings, try multiple IP addresses, whether it's a VPN or a carrier IP, so they can see that landing page and report the abuse effectively? And then the opportunity for more than just a URL takedown. So understand what delivery channel did this SMS number come from, or the voice call. Was it A to P? Was it a short code? Just acknowledging that you can take down a mobile number tends to be one of the first awkward parts of a conversation when people ask about, is it all spoofed? The answer is more often than not, it's not spoofed. So just trying to debunk some of those myths around, what's the use of going after some of these phone numbers. And then I think we can, again, we're at the place where we can start thinking about which phishing kit was behind this campaign. We are all familiar with the URL takedown process, but just to hold our vendors accountable to say, what else can you tell me about this threat actor? When you start to see the same domain structure being spun up for typo squatting, you can start to think about the same phishing kit being applied. So what if that same phishing kit was across 20 domains with the same exfil? You can just start to build a more powerful story than buying more takedowns. So I realize we have 10 minutes to go. I can't say enough about Ben's passion to help others. Are there any questions at this point based on your experience or things about mobile or kits in general? Yes, sir.
So Apple recently implemented a report junk
Yes.
SMS feature. Are you guys using that data? Are they using that data?
So I have to be careful in what I say due to contractual. That data is being used. I will say that. And it's very interesting. So if you don't know, the way that you report before this Apple thing, the way that you report SMS scams or phishing or spam was you had to forward that message to 7726, which back in the olden days it spells spam on the keyboard. Who would have thought of that? But that user interaction to do that is very tough, right? So you have to forward it, then you get a message back that says, can you tell me the sender? Then you have to go back to the message and you say, oh, the sender number was this, and it might get fat-fingered. And then it goes back and forth, and then that goes back to the carriers, and the carriers work in that. With this Apple data, it lifts it directly off of the device. So I've seen that data. That data is very, very detailed, and it's very, very good. And it is a lot. So yeah.
And is there any other, like I guess on Android, is that going to be a thing, or do you know?
I don't know. I would tell you, having been in this space for the past 22 years, carriers do not like to share data strictly because of the PII that can be in there. And if all of a sudden you realize, well, wait a minute, is somebody looking at my text messages? Then people are really going to be up in arms, and they should be. We don't want people reading our text messages. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And I can't see from the bright light, so if anybody else has questions. Sure. So if you're talking about related to phishing, shortcodes is the way to go. But here's what I'll tell you about shortcodes. If a company buys a shortcode, if you're Pepsi-Cola, if Pepsi-Cola buys a shortcode to do a marketing campaign, I guarantee you that the threat intelligence group doesn't know what that shortcode is because they're not talking across. So they don't know, how to handle that. Did that answer your question? If you want to grab me afterwards, we can get a little bit more detailed. Okay.
Putting all traffic on a device through a secure web gateway, is like one way potentially to combat this. Repeat the question. The mic. Oh, repeat what I'm
So
saying.
I'm trying to understand the question.
I'm just wondering if putting routing all traffic through a secure web gateway for a device is one way to defend against the human foibles.
So would that work? So the question was routing all traffic through a secure gateway to try and weed this out. Is that correct?
Where all traffic is inspected and new websites are blocked by default.
Yeah, they'll never do that. I get what you're saying, and
As a business person or as a consumer, I could potentially install this on a device.
On an actual mobile device?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you could. Certainly doing stuff like that would work. But now you've got to. What are you going to do with BYOD? Because I tell you, when my company comes to me and says, "Hey, we want to install something on your phone," no, sorry, I don't know what that is, and I get very nervous about things. But yeah, you could potentially do something like that. Anybody else? So real quickly, we've got 5 minutes, and I wanted to end on this note. why we got passionate about phishing kits. Probably a couple of years ago, as we were collecting phishing kits and starting this dive, we got a call from the Met Police in London. And the Met Police were doing an investigation on somebody who was doing large SMS campaigns against the government of the UK, as well as some of the banks. And they had stalled on their investigation. And they knew that we were, because we had been talking with them, they knew that we had kits, so they sent us over their threat intelligence. And we had kits. So we started tearing apart those kits, and one of the threat analysts or one of the threat hunters that works for me says, I've got something. And what he did was, when the threat actor was building the kit on his laptop, he decided to test his kit. Well, he forgot to turn his VPN on, and he logged all of that data, and then he zipped that kit up, and he sent it up. We grabbed it and pulled it down. So we pulled it down, we're like, okay, we've got IP information inside this kit that he had logged. We looked at the IPs and said, well, these aren't VPNs. Sent them over to the Met Police. The Met Police found it, kicked in the door. Now, the funny story here is the guy was living in the basement of his mom's house. And I can't make this up. But the funnier thing is he had this really elite name that he was going by, and one of the things that we found, well, first off, they found an open laptop. He was working on the kit that we had supplied to the Met Police at the time. So they matched the code up, and they're like, yeah, you're going to jail, buddy. But the funniest thing was when the guys called us and saying, hey, we just executed the search warrant, we've arrested the guy, and you're never going to believe this. He had a Gucci tote bag with his threat actor handle stenciled in it. And it just kind of matched everything. So it was in the code, it was on his Gucci bag, he had the code on his laptop. And so, but this kind of sums everything up. You can use kits to get a lot of good information and to go after these guys.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good job, Ben.